How might we experience God during Halloween? Before we get to the theological question, I would like to explore with you the anthropological implications of Halloween. I think it's fascinating that Halloween is one of the few events during the year where it is socially acceptable to dress up as something that is socially unacceptable. And quite oftentimes what we dress up as is monsters. Now, why do I find this fascinating? Because it is so easy for us to see the monster that exists out there, but difficult for us to examine ourselves and see the monster that might exist within. And from a very early in human history, we have found it very easy to see the monster that exists out there. The anthropologist René Girard helps us understand this in his exploration of mimetic theory. And what he states is that ancient sacrificial religion solved a very real problem. And the problem that it temporarily solved was communal violence. Very early in human history, before the first cultures were created, humans couldn't work together in order to create culture because there was so much violence within a community. And what ended up happening was unconsciously that violence got directed against what Girard calls a scapegoat. We might call this person a monster. And what ends up happening is that all of our accusations and violence against one another gets deflected and channeled onto a scapegoat or a monster. This person is blamed for all of the problems within our community. And so this person is our monster that our community forms an identity over and against. And this person gets demonized for all of these problems. This person is created into a demon, and we must exclude this demon from our midst. And so here we see very early on making monsters into the other and failing to see the monster that is within. In fact, we are blind to our own violence against a monster because this person is bad for our community and must be excluded. Now, where do we find the theological implications within this? Well, Jesus, during his ministry, encounters a demoniac, a man who is possessed by demons. And here the demon comes to Jesus and says, "What will you have to do with me, Son of God?" And Jesus heals the demoniac. He casts out these demons from this person. And it's interesting because when Jesus goes back to the community, to the village where this person is from, the people don't like it. They ask Jesus to leave. They don't want him to be in their presence because he's disrupted their sense of goodness. They identified themselves as good by having a monster to identify as bad. They knew that they were good because they had a common enemy, a monster that was out there, and Jesus disrupted that whole sense of goodness by having somebody who is bad. So how might we experience God on Halloween? I think it's very clear from the story of Jesus and the man possessed by demons that God is seeking to heal our relationships with those that we call our enemies, those that we call our monsters. But the question I think that we need to ask ourselves is, if we truly do find a sense of goodness over and against our enemies, do we want that healing to take place? You see, Jesus, I think, offers us a new way of finding a sense of community that isn't over and against an enemy, but is involved in love and compassion. And you see this in the Lord's Supper, in communion, where people come together and share a meal with one another. And for Jesus, this is the primary way to involve people into a loving, caring, compassionate community that is not defined over and against a common enemy. So those are my thoughts on theology and Halloween, and I would love to hear what you think. Thanks.